Hi, everybody. Dan Oman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Saturday, May the 4th. Of course, it's race number 12 at Churchill Downs, the Grade 1 $5 million Kentucky Derby. 3-year-olds going the classic distance of 1.25 miles. Let's take a look at this field. And before we get to the field, DRF's got a great giveaway. Three, not one, not two, three sporty DRF hats. If you subscribe and comment on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel on this race, give us your pick in the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby, and you can be eligible to win one of three sporty DRF hats. 22 entered the Kentucky Derby, Mike, and we already have a scratch. The number 9, Encino, is out. That gets the 21, Epic Ride, in. Epic Ride's going to at least add a little bit of speed to the party.
Yeah, I guess they'll come out running from the far outside post now, Dan. He starts from stall 20. He did show speed in his dirt debut last time. Feels like there's enough pace to go around in this Kentucky Derby. That's not that unusual, but I think he should be part of it anyway.
So now with the 21 breaking from post 20, the 22 Mugatu is on the outside looking in. One more scratch, and he gets to run on Saturday. You mentioned the pace. There should be pace in the Kentucky Derby. Timeform US concurs. This pace projector is updated after the scratch. We are expecting a fast pace. Just a touch. The pace setter in the Bluegrass, he's expected to be up there. Track Phantom, blinkers on. He's very, very fast. Fierceness, Mike, he's pretty quick. They don't have him on the lead. Something tells me that if he breaks well, John Velasquez isn't going to fight him. He's going to have him right up or thereabouts.
I agree with you. He did get a good draw here, mostly outside the other speeds. I suppose Epic Ride maybe complicates it a little bit, breaking to his outside. He doesn't need the lead Fierceness. He's comfortable sitting off of horses, but he's plenty fast too. And I'm with you, Dan. I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks running here, if Johnny V just goes on with it.
Another horse that's pretty quick drew the inside post position. That's the number 1, Door Knock, the little full brother to Mage, who, of course, won last year's Kentucky Derby. Now, this horse beat Sierra Leone in the Remsen 3 starts back. Might have had the track in his favor that day. There were a lot of folks looking forward to his seasonal debut in the Fountain of Youth. That race was really destroyed by scratches, and Door Knock only won in workmanlike fashion in relatively slow time. In the Bluegrass, they tried to, I think, teach him something. Take him in behind horses, raid him, and he just couldn't finish with Sierra Leone as that one got his revenge. Breaking from the rail, if he breaks, they got to go, right? I think they have to try a speed attempt.
Yeah. I can't. Listen. The Bluegrass. It feels like I know that these guys don't use those. They're prep races, but I know those guys don't use them as preps anymore. It feels like Gargan used that as a prep to get him in behind horses and see what happens. Ultimately, then he didn't run well with that running style. So I gotta believe they want to go back to using his speed here. The rail just makes that a much easier call. Now you got to break and come out of there running and just see what happens. I mean, let's be honest about him. He has not improved as a 3-year-old so far. He's run twice. He has not moved forward from what I thought was a pretty interesting 2-year-old campaign. He seems like he has a lot of talent. He just hasn't put it all together yet, and he's got to take the biggest step forward now in the toughest race of his life.
The number 2 is Sierra Leone, and it seemed like he was destined to be a star from day one, a horse that sold for $2.3 million at the prestigious Saratoga yearling sale. That was the highest price. Then he wins his debut. In the Remsen, it looked like he was going right by Door Knock. Maybe he hung a little bit. Maybe the track was against him. He did seem a little bit green. In his 2 starts this year for Chad Brown, he's worn blinkers and he's finished off his races. One in the Risen Star, and then this race, the Bluegrass, a race where he did get some pace. He got to the outside, not a straw in his path, but he kicks him down, and it's a likable lake stretch battle for the win over just a touch.
Yeah, it's a really nice finish that he puts in. He did get a clean trip in here, and he did have a fast pace in front of him, but you can just look at the replay now, Dan. There's nobody else making up ground into this pace. It's only him, and he's just going to roll by these horses late. Another really strong performance, another forward move for this horse. I personally would argue, first of all, he's run well in all 4 of his starts. He could easily be undefeated on the way into this Derby. And I would argue that he's won the 2 strongest preps on the way into this Derby, the Risen Star and then that Bluegrass. I think they were the 2 best prep races we've had.
With his running style, there probably is going to be several horses in front of him as they head into the first turn. It's all about whether this horse can get a trip and pick his way through this big and bulky field. Mystic Dan is the number 3. He's run one of the fastest prep races on the way in. That was the Southwest over a wet track 2 starts back, where he got a picture-perfect rail skimming ride to win, but he looked good doing it. And then he came back in the Arkansas Derby, Mike, and I thought he ran just fine to be 3rd.
Yeah, he didn't run poorly in there. That Arkansas Derby's not my favorite prep race, Dan. And I ultimately just felt like Mystic Dan took a little bit of a step backward in that race. I mean, I didn't see some kind of huge excuse for him in there. I mean, I guess if you want to like him in this race at a really big price, that's fair because he does have that really fast win 2 starts back. There's at least some kind of a chance this track could be wet on Saturday. And I guess that could make you reevaluate him as well. I'll be honest. I think he's a tough call in this race, whether or not to use him at all at a big price. I'm mostly concerned. You can tell me if you agree with this or not. I'm concerned about the distance. I'm not sure that he really wants to go this far.
I think the distance is a big question mark. He's kind of have a miler's pedigree, but I do think Brian Hernandez Jr. has a plan in mind. And breaking from post position 3, it's to get out of there, get ahead of Sierra Leone, and maybe try to tuck in behind Dornoch and work out a similar trip as the Southwest. Maybe it's the kind of trip that would work out well for him in this race. Catching Freedom is the number 4, going out for trainer Brad Cox. This horse was beaten by Sierra Leone in the Risen Star. He came right back, kicked him down in the Louisiana Derby, Mike. That was a race where it set up for him. There was pace and he kicked. Now he's a true one-run closer.
Yeah, he's going to need a setup just as Sierra Leone is. And obviously 2 starts back, he was in against Sierra Leone, just got out-kicked by him in that race. But that was over a wet track. He improved last time. He did have the setup there. He did have a clean trip into it. I still thought that he ran well in the Louisiana Derby, Dan. And I just like the way that he started out his career also. I just feel like this horse, he really ran well and he got better with every start. He wasn't necessarily an easy horse to ride early in his career, but he got better in that regard as time has gone on. I can see him being ahead of Sierra Leone when this field hits the top of the stretch. And if he is, he's going to make a run in this race. He's a little bit interested in here.
He's certainly interesting. 8-1 on the morning line. Maybe he drifts a little bit. You never know. The Japanese invader, Forever Young, a lot of buzz about him. Catalytic is up next, the number 5. Only a one-time winner. That was a sprint race in his career debut back last fall. He started twice this year. He ran okay in his first start, a first-level allowance sprint at Tampa Bay, and then he was no match for Fierceness in the Florida Derby after chasing that one throughout, so he really has to step forward.
Yeah, and listen, he's run pretty well in all 3 of his starts, but they're asking a lot of this horse here. They asked a lot of him last time. I feel like they were probably pleased with the race that he ran in the Florida Derby, even though he got beat a million lengths by Fierceness. So they're just going to press on here and give this horse a shot. But he's got a lot working against him in this race.
The great Wayne Lucas will send out the 6, Just Steel, battle-tested son of Triple Crown winner Justify. He's run 11 times. He's been compromised by some wide trips in some of his preps at Oaklawn Park this winter and into the spring. Here's his most recent race, the Arkansas Derby. Muth, who is not eligible for the Derby, wins it. Here's Just Steel on the outside, and as always, he tries hard and he gets up for second.
Yeah, tried hard in this race. He's just not good enough. He will wind up second best in this race, though. He's just sort of grinding at the end of this race, Dan. But there's nothing wrong with the performance. I feel like if you want to go back to the Southwest and just say, listen, he was on the outside. Mystic Dan, the rail seemed like the place to be. Mystic Dan gets the inside run, and Just Steel ran better than it looks. That's fine. His Smarty Jones prior to that, I guess, was an okay performance, but I didn't really see any issues there. Just wasn't good enough. The real bad trip for him was 2 back in the Rebel. He had an impossible trip that day, and he was nowhere. But I can't. I'm not betting him off the Arkansas Derby. I don't care what kind of price he is. And I can't find the other race that gets me interested in this horse.
I have some questions about his distance limitations as well. He just hasn't been finishing it up as well. You talked about that race in the Southwest. Now, Mystic Dan did have a much better trip and saved much more ground, but he also dusted Just Steel in the stretch when the real running began. We'll see if Just Steel, getting back to Churchill Downs, where he is a stakes winner, can take that slight step forward. Honor Marie is also a stakes winner at Churchill Downs. He won the graded Kentucky Jockey Club in his final start at 2. I think the Risen Star was just a good first step for his 3-year-old campaign, and he seemed to put it together last time out in the Louisiana Derby, rallying for second. I thought all in all, he got a good closer's trip in that race. The race flow was there for him. He was running on at the end. Now he might need to take just a little bit of a step forward in his 3rd start of the form cycle, but I think he's cycling into this race the right way.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. It does feel like he's also one of the horses that the people who pay attention to workouts are really raving about this horse. He seems like he's doing really well right now. So I guess, those are all positives for him. I'll be honest, Dan, I can't say that I like any of his races all that much. I know he's a graded stakes winner over this track as a 2-year-old, but to me, he just had a perfect trip that day and kind of took advantage. His 2 races this year, they're okay. He didn't run as well as Catching Freedom did last time, though. And I feel like he's got to not only make up ground on that horse, he's got to make up ground on some other horses as well.
Just a touch is the number 8. He did not run as a 2-year-old, but neither did his sire Justify, and that guy ended up winning the Triple Crown. He won his career debut and looked really good doing it over a wet track at the fairgrounds. But Mike, no two wet tracks are the same, and I thought he caught a really sticky surface second time out, stretching to a mile in the Gotham. And while he was no match for the winner, I thought he was very game for second when it looked like he was going to settle for fourth. He did a lot of the dirty work in the bluegrass, pushing a really quick pace before tiring behind Sierra Leone. This guy has got a lot of talent, but it's also a big ask in only his fourth lifetime start to stretch out a mile and a quarter against this group.
Yeah, those things are all true. I mean, you mentioned the comparisons to Major there. The other comparison you can make to Mage's final prep last year, he got beat by Forte, who was going to be the favorite. And it just sort of felt like maybe Mage ran the better race when all things were taken into account. I mean, you could look at that bluegrass and just say, this horse being part of that pace and still holding on for second, maybe he ran every bit as well as Sierra Leone did last time. I don't know. I don't think that's, out of the realm to look at the race that way. They're asking a lot of this horse. I think he's super talented. And at the end of the day, when this season's all said and done, he might be as good as any of these horses down the line. And I also, Dan, we looked at that pace breaker. They have him on the lead. I don't believe that Brad Cox is going to be sending this horse to the lead this time. He seems handy enough to me that they'll try to sit off the pace somewhere and just see if he can get that kind of a trip. And if he does get that kind of a trip, he could be pretty dangerous in here. This horse can run.
Well, this horse has a tremendous amount of natural ability, and I think he's going to be right in the thick of things when they turn into the stretch. The 9 Encino is scratched. That moves everybody in one, including our 2 Japanese interests. The number 10, T.O. Password, a perfect 2 for 2 in his career. This guy has shown speed in both starts in his career debut. He sat second, he made the lead, won in driving fashion. Last time out, got to the front and was all out to win, going a mile and an eighth against much weaker horses. So he's going to be facing the fastest pace he's ever faced in his career, going against the toughest horses he's ever faced in his career, and he only has 2 lifetime starts.
Yeah, there's just a lot working against this horse. And not only does he only have 2 lifetime starts, Dan, but it's hard when you go back and watch that most recent start. It's hard to get excited about this horse. I mean, he had a pretty soft trip. It didn't seem like they were going that fast in there. He's loose. And let's be honest, he was saved by the wire in there. One more jump, he's beat.
One more jump he's beaten, one more jump he doesn't earn his way into the Derby, because by winning that race, he got the automatic Japan road to the Derby berth. Forever Young, the number 11, could have stayed in Japan and gotten the easier road. They decided to test him, ran him in the Saudi Derby. Don't think he really cared for that racetrack, going a one-turn mile, and he ran down a pretty quick horse. Last time out in the UAE Derby, he got more distance, he got 2 turns, he wore a hood for the first time because supposedly he doesn't like kickback, and breaking from the far outside post might have actually helped him because there was no dirt being kicked in his face. This was not a very strong field, but he did it the right way.
Yeah, he did. Seemed like they consciously stayed on the outside in this race, and it works out for him. Listen, this is another good performance. I find it hard to knock him. I don't feel like I'm, have anything interesting really to say about this horse. Dan, he's got a pretty solid fan base behind him, and I do feel like there's a chance that he's good enough to be really competitive in this Kentucky Derby. He's just not my kind of horse. I can really just evaluate him off of the 2 races, the last 2 starts, overseas. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't blown away by either of those performances.
I've been fairly impressed by his overall body of work, especially his races in Japan, where he showed that he seems to be pace adaptable. He can win from just off of the pace. And that race 2 starts back, that was a very fast-paced race for a Japanese event. And he looked like he was struggling for a little bit, dealing with that kickback. But once he got into stride, he was able to wear down those horses. I don't worry about distance with Forever Young. Obviously, this is a big class test, and the UAE Derby, as we know, has not been a very good predictor for Kentucky Derby success. Plus, the kickback has to be at least a little bit of an issue. Breaking now from post position 10, if he doesn't get in the clear, he could be in trouble.
Yeah, because trips are of utmost importance here. Not only do you have to worry about that, whether it turns out to be true or not that he doesn't like kickback, you have to at least take it into consideration, especially if he gets bet in here. But you also have to be conscious that this horse isn't great from the gate. He cannot afford a slow start in here.
That's an excellent point, because in several of his races, he is usually just a step slow. Now, he's able to recover and get into the race, but That could be a big issue here with these crush of 20 horses getting set to go with a scrum into the first turn. He's got to break well or else he'll be pinched back. Track Phantom usually breaks well, and he's usually on the lead, as he was in the Louisiana Derby last time out. That was a very fast pace. He was the only part of the pace hanging around at the end. He's getting blinkers for the first time. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's on the lead going into the first turn, Mike. I do have some distance concerns, but if somehow this pace doesn't materialize and Track Phantom is in control, I can see him outrunning his 20-1 odds.
I can see that too. I think he's a pretty talented horse. I feel like this Derby, there's so much working against him, though, Dan. I'm with you on the distance part of it. It does feel like, as well as he's run all through the prep season, it does feel like maybe he hasn't improved as much as some of these other horses have as the races have gone on. And, listen, when you look at those last two races where he couldn't hold on, I get that the Louisiana Derby was a closer's race, but it's not like that pace was super fast, and he was sort of in control. The race two back when Sierra Leone got him, he had everything his own way that day. He still couldn't hold on. It feels like this is a really, really tough spot for him.
West Saratoga is up next, another horse with prior graded stakes winning experience at Churchill Downs. He won the Iroquois going a one-turn mile late last summer, and he's coming into this race off of a solid second in the Jeff Ruby Stakes on the synthetic at Turfway, where he kind of mid-moved into the teeth of the pace, Mike, before being run down by Endlessly.
I thought he ran fine in that race, actually. I know it was on a different surface, but it was, the longest race of his career. I thought he actually ran okay that day. It's his other races, the dirt races, that don't really do a lot for me. I respect the fact that his two wins last year, that he did it like different ways. He was on the lead breaking his maiden, and then he closes into a really fast pace to win the Iroquois over this track. I mean, those are positives, I guess, but where's the one race that he's run that gives him any kind of a chance in here?
The 14 is Endlessly, and he's one of the big question marks in this race because it will be his first start on dirt. He's run on turf, he's run on synthetic, and he's run very well on both of those surfaces. In the El Camino Real Derby at Golden Gate, he blew by the field from the back of the pack, and he looked like a winner every step from the back of the pack in the Jeff Ruby, especially considering the pace he received. He'll get pace in here. The question is, will he handle the dirt? He's got a turfy pedigree.
His races are really good. It just doesn't feel like he's a dirt horse. And I think the biggest part of that, Dan, is it doesn't even feel like his trainer thinks he's a dirt horse. And it seems like Mike McCarthy didn't really want to run him in this race. And it's the owner's call, and they're going to take a shot here. I think that those are all bad signs. This horse is really talented. I'm not betting him in his dirt debut in the Kentucky Derby.
Sierra Leone's getting all the attention for the Chad Brown outfit, but Chad also has the 15 domestic product. And aside from running a couple of slow races in his two preps this year, he really hasn't done much wrong. It was a slow-paced race in the Holy Bull. He got to the outside, and who did he outfinish for second? Fierceness. He then came back in this race, the Tampa Bay Derby, another just woefully slow pace. And here's domestic product in behind horses. He has to really find something as they're sprinting for home, and he does, getting up to beat a couple of minor next out winners. I think this horse is a little bit better than he looks on paper, Mike.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I do think it's only fair to point out that Fierceness was stopping in that Holy Bull there when this horse got by him for second. But this is a good performance. I mean, that was a super slow pace. He had to force his way out into the clear through the stretch. He did have a good finish in there. And so I just feel like for those reasons, the last two starts, you don't want to put too much stock in the speed figures, just because you can't get fast figures when you're trying to close into slow paces. It just doesn't really happen. Is he better than he looks on paper? Yes. Is he worth throwing in there somewhere at some kind of really big price? I think yes. I will just point out, I think the one drawback that I haven't seen mentioned too much with this horse is the slow paces might have actually helped him in his last two starts. He kept up close. He had a big finish to get the job, but it's not like he had a ton of ground to make up. He's been in exactly one race so far in his career since I stretched him out that had a really fast pace, the Remsen, and he was totally empty through the stretch as he sat in behind there. So that was a wet track too, so that could have something to do with it. But the one time he had to deal with a fast pace, he was nowhere.
Number 16 is Granmo the First. We just saw him in that multi-horse photo finish in the Tampa Bay Derby. He was third. He was wide for most of the way. I thought he ran well. They tested him in the Florida Derby last time out, and he was no match for Fierceless. He got beat 16 lengths, so he's got to find a lot more.
Yeah, he's just another horse that when you just sort of take apart his form, you see why he's 50-1 on the morning line. There's not one race you can point to that suggests he's going to be even close to competitive in here, Dan. He's got to somehow find a way to take a huge forward step.
Here's the horse to beat, the 17 Fierceness, last year's 2-year-old champion after winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Kind of a Jekyll and Hyde year. That one performance in the Champagne certainly wasn't very good. And then in the Holy Bull, we were expecting great things. He didn't break very well. He chased outside a slow pace, and he was flat. We needed to see the real Fierceness show up, and maybe he did in this race. The Florida Derby, where it was an outclassed field, but Fierceness just destroyed them, winning by double-digit lengths with a 110 Beyer speed figure.
Yeah, winning like this and then earning that kind of a figure sort of softens the blow. When you sort of go through the PPs of the horses that are behind him, you realize that he's just beating a terrible field of horses. But to do it like that is exactly what you wanted to see. I thought he had a legit excuse in the Champagne dance. That's not the kind of race that I really care about. The Holy Bull's a little bit tougher to sort of just sweep aside and say, well, he had some kind of, he did have trouble early in that race, sort of got bumped around. After that, I thought he was in a perfectly good spot. To me, the more I think about the Holy Bull, the more I feel like he just might have been a short horse that day. And I hate to say that. Maybe Pletcher just didn't have, Pletcher didn't have him 100% there because he was in the mix to mid-stretch. He just got really tired at the end of the race. I love the way that he bounced back last time. He's the most talented horse in this race. If he gets the right trip, he's supposed to be really tough.
That's the key. He's got to get the right trip. First, he's got to get out of the gate. Again, he's
Yeah.
had that situation with Forever Young where sometimes it's a bit of a stutter step start for him, and then he gets pinched, and then things happen to him. Is he the kind of horse, if this pace is fast and there are 2 or 3 horses in front of him, that he can chase that fast pace and still finish? That's the big question.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at the 18 Stronghold. Very underrated, coming in from Southern California for Phil D'Amato. This horse has done nothing wrong. He's never been out of the exacta from 6 starts. He looked pretty good winning the Santa Anita Derby. I love this ride. I liked how this trip worked out, but he still had to squeeze his way through in between horses and got it done. He's now paired up Beyer tops in his last few races, but he's also yet to reach the 90 Beyer plateau, so he's got to show a lot more improvement in that regard.
Yeah, that's a big drawback for this horse. And this isn't vintage Santa Anita Derby stuff. You usually really respect the Santa Anita Derby winner when they come to the Kentucky Derby. It's probably not the case here. It's not a really strong field, but he did get the job done after a perfect trip. They sort of took the easier route before that and ran him at Sunland Park, and he just won that race pretty handily. I don't know, Dan. I kind of like everything he's done. I really hate the Los Al Futurity last year. That's the one race of his that I don't like. Everything else that he's done, I really like it. I just wonder if he's not quite good enough at this point to win a race like the Derby.
Another horse coming into the Derby off paired Beyer tops is the 19 Resilience. He has earned 90 Beyer speed figures in his last 2 for the great Bill Mott. I think his Risen Star is a lot better than it looks because he was on a hard chase going after a fast horse in Track Phantom, and then he got a little bit tired. Mott put blinkers on for the Wood Memorial. This horse has wonderful tactical speed. Let's watch the Wood. He sat just off of the pace. He gets produced. He makes the lead, and once he gets to the front, Mike, he's just drawing off with confidence.
Yeah, I like this performance from him. I know that the Wood, it's not a super strong field. The horse that's going to run second to him, we'll talk about next, is over 100 to 1. And this horse, he got a perfect trip. The 2 favorites didn't fire at all in here. So all those things sort of, you can look at it that way and say, who cares, man? He only ran another 90 Beyer speed figure, and he didn't really improve, and he beat a bad field. I look at it different. I think he really moved forward with the blinkers on. He got a great trip. He won easy. The Risen Star, you've already mentioned all the good things he did in there. It was also right off of a maiden win. This is a horse who he's gotten better. Every time Mott sent him out there, he gets better, he gets better, he gets better. I think he improved again last time. I wonder if there's one more forward move in him. He'll get the distance.
I think you make great points because he's a late bloomer who might just be peaking at absolutely the right time. Many of these Derby horses, and Marcus Hirsch mentioned it in his feature on Bill Mott and Resilience in the Daily Racing Forum on Tuesday, many of these horses have just been brilliant from the start, and they've kept it up. Resilience has improved slowly with each and every start, and Mott wouldn't be here unless he'd be brimming at least with confidence that the horse would make a good showing for himself. Resilience at a big price, Junior Alvarado. Bill Mott, of course, had tremendous success last year with Cody's Wish, Just FYI, etc. Society Man is the number 20. He is the second entrant in here, trained by Danny Gargan. Of course, he's got the number 1 in Dornoch. Second in the race we just saw behind Resilience, Mike. This is another horse that seems to be improving, but he's going to have to take another step forward. I mean, getting beat by Resilience is fine. He's only 1 start removed from a maiden win. That was with Lasix on over a muddy track.
Yeah, true enough. The track could come up wet, I guess, on Saturday, so you know that this horse can handle it. He also, when he broke his maiden, really fast pace in front of him, and he came with a really strong finish to win that race going away. I like that about him. His Wood Memorial was fine, Dan. He got a great trip in that race. He did his best with it. I thought he ran really well in there, despite being a huge price for some reason. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I love him in the Derby. Am I going to be shocked when he's, fifth or sixth in this race? I'm not.
Thanks to the scratch of Encino, the 21 Epic Ride is now in the Kentucky Derby, breaking from post position 20. He is a stakes winner on the all-weather at Turfway Park. We saw him on dirt in the Bluegrass. He was up close to a fast pace. He ran okay to be third, but Just a Touch was also up close to that fast pace, and Just a Touch outfinished Epic Ride. Epic Ride is a horse that I have some concerns about this distance, and he has to prove he classes up.
Agree. I'm really worried about the distance for him. I have no real problem with the race that he ran in the Bluegrass last time. He did his best. The pace was fast. He was close to it. He hung around fairly well at the end. He's still hard to like in this race.
And if we get one more scratch, Mugutu gets into this race, the number 22, and Mugatu ran fifth in the Bluegrass last time out. It was a non-threatening performance. We've seen some big shocks in the Derby. This would be a big one.
It would be a big one. He did move forward in the Bluegrass last time back on dirt, but he didn't, to me anyway, he didn't run that well with a really good setup. His other two dirt races just aren't good enough.
Top pick time for the Kentucky Derby. Mike, I like where you're going. You're going with the price. You're going with the great Bill Mott. Resilience seems to be getting better and better and better.
Yeah, this isn't a Derby, Dan, where I'm like, way against the favorites in here. I actually feel like with Sierra Leone and Fierceness, I feel like you're kind of on solid ground. I know that those two horses do have questions to answer, but I think there's a way to look at this race and to say they're the two best horses, man. And they have diverse running styles too. So you get one up close, you get one from the back. I'm not way against them, but I'm really taken with Resilience. I like the way he's developing. I think he's never been better than he is right now. And they're going to take their shot at the Derby at a price. I'm with him.
You will be getting a price, to be sure, on a sharp horse. I usually don't love playing closers in big, bulky fields, and Sierra Leone acts like a horse that's probably going to have to come from out of it. I just love the agility we've seen in his last two races, where he's moved from inside to outside, and he's done it very, very quickly, kniving his way through in between horses. He'll have to maybe utilize that. I think it'll work well for him in here. Fierceness is the horse to beat. We'll see if he sort of gets the trip that he needs. I wonder if Track Phantom can do a little bit better with the blinkers. I do have some concerns, obviously, with the distance as well as the pace scenario. But if the pace doesn't materialize, I think he's a little bit better than he looks on paper. I've always believed in Forever Young's natural ability. 19, 17, 2, 8 for Mike, 2, 17, 12, 11 for me. It's the Kentucky Derby, the DRF race of the day on Saturday. Remember, 3 free hats are available. All you have to do to win one of them, and at least enter for a chance to win one of them, is subscribe and comment on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Good luck.